So, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode, another meeting of the book club, How to Be an Anti-Racist. I'm your facilitator, Nick P., the guy with the beard. That's me. I am so honored and privileged to have some friends with me this evening. I want to start out by introducing everyone. I'm just going to call your name out, and you feel free to let the people know who you are. First of all, we have my good brother, Reverend Kevin Kosh. What's up, brother?
Greetings, God bless. What's up? It's your boy, Rev Kev, campus pastor at the I Love Jackson State University. What's up? What's happening?
What's up? What's up? So, if you are from Jackson State University, we want to just say what's up. What's up? We here repping for you. I'm not from Jackson State. I'm from Payne College, and I'm from the ITC. But we all family. The HBCU
HBCU.
family is strong. It's strong.
Yeah.
Um, and thank you so much for joining us, brother Kevin. Also, we have my new sister, Elizabeth Henry. What's up, Elizabeth?
Hello, I am Reverend Elizabeth Henry. I am just across the way from Kevin here in Jackson, Mississippi. I am the Wesley Director at Millsaps College, which is, in Jackson, Mississippi as well. And we're just a little down the way from Jackson State. So I'm so excited to be here with y'all.
So if you are watching from Millsaps College, we want to say welcome. We hope that you are tuning in. Also, we have our technical director. She's not on the screen. Oh, there she is. She's coming in on the screen. We have Mashakity McKenzie, Minister Mashakity McKenzie. We call her Mo, but you can call her Mashakity McKenzie or Mo, whatever, whatever the Lord leads you to call her. But we want you to have a moment just to tell the people who you are.
All right. So as Nick has given you all my handles, I'm also the communications director at Gammon De La Seminary. And if you ever need or want or curious about Gammon, I am the person, but I can point you to the right person. So I'm glad you are here, and I hope you learned something.
Awesomeness. So y'all gotta help me. We're having some, if anything could go wrong, it's gonna go wrong. Especially in this social distancing season where everybody is on a phone call, on a Zoom call, on FaceTime. So I need y'all to help me every time Kevin and Mo speaks. I need y'all, Elizabeth, can you tell me what they said? If they're saying something to me, because it has this robotic effect, but we're working through it.
So it did the robot thing for Mo for me too. So I was hoping that you caught it, Kevin. I don't know if you. I don't know why my computer is being rude. I'm so sorry.
I think now it's Elizabeth too. Oh my God. Fix it, Jesus. Fix it, Jesus. Okay. Black Jesus, fix it.
I can hear all y'all fine. The audience can hear us fine. So just pretend like we can hear each other.
Okay, sounds good.
Help me, Lord. I can hear y'all a little bit. We're gonna work through it. See, I come from the black church. In the black church, we roll with the punches. You see, we don't always have an order service. We don't always know what's going on, but guess what? We keep it moving. So we pros at knowing how to keep it moving. So shout out to everybody out there from Gammon Theological Seminary, everyone out there from the beloved Interdenominational Theological Center. That's where I'm at right now. And everywhere where you are, whatever church you're from, we want you to feel free to share in the comments. We want you to always feel free that you, whatever your view is, it's open. But we want to welcome you to express your opinion in love. Be aware that we all have varying opinions, but we have to have a place where people can talk about issues and not just hide behind issues, not think God is not interested in these type of issues and social justice issues. Like I heard a friend of mine say, when we worship God, we're just supposed to talk about the name on the wall, and it was the name of Jesus that was on the wall. And I want you to understand that the name on the wall, Jesus, is interested in your daily lives, is interested in your well-being, is not interested in you throwing up holy hands, but not having victory and joy and freedom in your personhood. So I want you to know that God is with you wherever you are in your circumstances. If you're socially distanced, if you're quarantined, God is with you. And we are with you. And we're here to talk about a little something that Dr. Ibram X. Kendi has ingeniously coined called anti-racism. And I just thank all of you on tonight for being a part of this conversation, for being brave enough to do what so many people are afraid to do. And let's talk about, talk about racism and talk about how it affects our ability to connect with people. We've been living through a pandemic for years, since 1619. And it's before, COVID-19 was here. We've been living in this pandemic that has created a spiritual distance, if you will, between communities. Even though we may not be physical, may not have always been physically, but there's been a spiritual distance between so many communities, and we are trying to dismantle in practical discussion those spiritual distances. But I want to also open up the floor right now to y'all. If you have any particular organizations that you want to shout out to, any safety issues at your schools that you want people to be aware of, I want to give you room and opportunity to shout those out right now. I'm a mute so I don't interfere with y'all.
I was gonna let Kevin go first since this is my first week. I don't know if there's a normal format, so I'll let Kevin go first. No, that's okay. Okay. Yeah, we're kind of winding down in our semester, so we don't have any particular initiatives or anything going on right this minute. So yeah, we don't have any big initiatives to shout out right now. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but yeah, we're, like I said, we're kind of winding down this semester, and everybody's kind of just trying to get through finals as safely as possible and head home. So yeah, I don't have any big ministries or initiatives going on at the moment. So I'll turn it over to Kevin.
All right. So the campus is closing down. Students, faculty, staff, as you all are getting ready to go home, know that we're praying for you, but also please stay safe. When you go home, make sure that you're masking up. Make sure that you're staying socially distanced. When you get back on campus, we do have free COVID testing. Please get your testing done, and then take advantage of the PAW partners on campus. PAW is an acronym for Prayer Always Works. We work with the Latasha Norman Center on campus so that you can receive your mental health needs, but then also your emotional, spiritual support needs. We are here for you. Just ask and we will create the space. So thank you.
Amazing, awesome. So I want you all to make sure that you be safe. You're wearing your mask, just like my sister, my brother said. Make sure you're wearing your mask. It's not just about your own sickness, or if you feel okay or not. It's also about, you have to also be considerate, have empathy for other people's fears. So other people don't know your status. They don't know how well or not well you are. So you want to wear a mask in the sense of also being mindful that people, can be okay with at least being 6 feet. So I walked into a car, I got my oil changed today. And there was a young man. I feel so bad for him. I wish I had a fresh, what is it, N97 or in something like that, in the mask, N95. Is what you said? Yeah, N95. N95. Yes, I love JSU. Yes. See, that's the HBCU thing. That's how you know you real HBCU made. If you say THEE in front of your school. But yeah, so I was in the shop today, and a young man walked in, and he didn't have a mask on, and the guy told him, he was like, I can serve you he wouldn't even walk up to him. Not that either was wrong, he just wouldn't walk up to him because he didn't have a mask on. And I was just thinking about, how often we're afraid to be in contact with other human beings just because of this mask. So I want to encourage you all to wear a mask, because that will help some people who are not comfortable being in the same room, being in the same, context or physically with you. Wear your mask for to be empathetic of someone else. Also, your symptoms may be different than someone else's. So don't take for granted that just because, hey, I may just have a headache, I'm fine. You want to always wear your mask, because your symptoms may be different than someone else's. But leading to our conversation about anti-racism. So for the past couple of weeks, it's been what, about 5 weeks or so. I'm bad with time and all that type of thing. But it's been about 5 or maybe 6 weeks that we've met with the anti-racism book club, and it looks like it has developed a lot of conversation, a lot more than what I would have expected. We kind of were able to stay in chapters 1 and 2. In chapters 1, Dr. Kendi was talking about definitions, and chapter 2, he began to define a lot of things like anti-racism and inequity, and what is racism, what is an anti-racist, and we were really getting to the discussion based upon, we say that we're not something often. We say that we're not racist, or I hate racists, and we really have a hard time really saying what that means and what it doesn't mean. And Dr. Kendi really brought to light not just this notion of equality. We like to always say that, yes, you're equal and I'm equal, and let's just talk about equality, and we stop there. But what I appreciate about Dr. Kendi is he talks about this thing called equity, and how even though we human beings are equal in our value, the race is not the same for some people. And Richard, our brother who's not here, he's a healthcare worker. Also, my sister Laura, she is a healthcare. What is it? A health. What was it called? What did they call them in the beginning of the COVID phase? A primary worker, essential worker. Yeah, an essential worker. So they work in the medical field. So both of them are out this evening. But Richard, who works at Medical College of Georgia in Augusta, he offered an analogy of how, let's say there's a stairwell to get to a door. And we just look at it and we say it's a stairwell. Everyone has the same opportunity to get to the door because there's a stairwell. The stairwell doesn't discriminate. It's just a stairwell. But what he was saying is it's not equity, because someone who is in a wheelchair, if they roll up to that stairwell, they're not going to have the same opportunity to get to the door as someone with 2 working legs. And so he was offering how equity looks beyond just equality. Equality can be a superficial, we're just equal, but it looks to what is everyone's context. The contexts are different. So yeah, you are equal in value, but your context is much different. It's just like when we talk about, I just want to be colorblind and take a look at a resume. And, just, I don't really care about the color. I just want to look at their resume. But we also have to consider their resume shows up on my table because of different contexts. Some people were able to go to Ivy League institutions. And so that's how their resume got on my desk. So we have to give room to equity. But I wanted to open up the conversation. I also have an open door type of conversation flow. Whenever you feel like you want to have something to say, jump right in.
Yeah, so like even talking about equity and inequity, it leads us into what kind of chapter 3 is talking about, right? So the first chapter, it deals with like the definitions. The second chapter deals with this dual consciousness that is going on. And then the third chapter goes into power. And that's what inequity is essentially rooted in. power. And the author gives like these personal illustrations of how he was looking at schools with his parents, and then he even talks about his name and how when he found out where the lineage of his name, it made him rethink some things. And he starts talking and not just about the definition of racism, but how racism inherently was rooted in power, access, resources, and restricting it from others, so that a particular group can receive access and get wealth from it. And so when we look at this chapter, we can also kind of think about different instances in our lives and ask some of those difficult questions for us. Like, so what instance in our personal lives have we experienced where my racial identity has benefited me or people like me or hurt others? How can I embrace my racial identity and not be racist? You know, like these are those kind of questions like that we are invited to engage. But then I also want to have us think about it from the Christian standpoint and use scripture. Power is important to talk about this when it comes to racism, because a lot of times as Christians, when we talk about racism, it deals with us being polite, courteous, and caring. Us being in the South, a lot of times, you know, we're hospitable. But then there's this thing called toxic hospitality, where I can be kind to you, but I don't actually have this relationship with you. And so dealing with the power, this is the next level of racism that we have to talk about. Because yes, we're not personally responsible for the inequity caused by our forefathers and mothers, but I'm not cruxing this matter on you being mean or not. We're talking about power. But Rev Kev, what scripture do we have for this? Let's look at Jesus when he's talking to the rich young ruler. This is the perfect example of power. He followed all the rules of the text, all the rules of the church, and he said, well, give up what you got. Because power says that you have to give up what you have so that we all are equal. Because our power can sometimes create these levels of superiority and inferiority. What do we mean by this? As Christians, we have a biblical call to charity, but that is not our only call. Yes, we are called to serve the poor and things like that, but we are also called to be critical of that because we're also called to do justice. Because I am charitable does not mean that I'm not racist. It doesn't mean that you're not mean, because you're not mean probably. But the institutional racism has to deal with power. Charity, if we don't look at it, charity can diminish one's dignity if we're not doing it in relationship with somebody. Charity can also create dependency, and then it also can preserve the status quo. Am I saying do away with charity? No, I am not. But if I'm more concerned with feeding 500 people as opposed to eradicating hunger, I might be preserving the status quo. We're challenging not just doing good so that we can say that we're pious, but addressing the sins that actually happen. So then that calls us to say, am I doing charity? Am I an advocate? Or am I standing in solidarity? If I'm doing charity, I'm doing good work. If I'm doing advocacy, I've done read the books, I vote, I do all this, but advocacy is needed and it's good. But advocacy is not solidarity, because solidarity takes mutuality. Mutuality in the term that there must be a mission and relationship that we're connected with. So if I am an advocate, that's good. I'm at the polls. I'm doing the litigation. I'm doing the legislation. But do I have a relationship? Church, do you have a relationship with your community? Do you have a relationship with that student in your classroom? When you do that, when you have the relationship, then we start realizing as the church, relationship is the primary thing and projects are secondary. We have a lot of missions and projects and statuses and visions that we cast, but are they rooted in relationship? And as the church, are they rooted in relationship to Jesus Christ? If the answer is no, including in our racist work, are we truly being anti-racist? When we stand in solidarity, just like giving up what we have, we now stand hand in hand with our brothers and sisters of different plights. Institutionally, it gives voice to the voices of the margin. We see this a lot in our biblical text. When Jesus talks about the Good Samaritan, that would have been an counter story to what they were used to. We talk about the woman at the well. That would have been a counter story to what they were used to. We talk about the man who had to pick up his mat. All of these are voices on the margins, church. Do we currently give voice to those on the margins, affirmation to the voices on the margins? So organizational change seeks to build relationships of positive power, and solidarity also helps hear the voices of the oppressed. Yes, we have a biblical call to do charity, but this can also be an act of injustice if we just see ourselves as the person that can save. Because a lot of times we're not just called to feed somebody, but what their soul is thirsting for is their relationship, that gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. The good news can show somebody the light that's in them so that they can see that they have something to offer and not just something to get. Are we empowering the people? Because that's what it's all about. Yes, we have to do charity. Yes, it's good for us to be advocates, but there's an extra step that we need to get to shift these power dynamics, which is standing in solidarity. And a lot of times that solidarity leaves us like the rich young ruler, scratching our heads and walking away sad because we have to give up a part of our privilege so that we can understand God's grace and experience it together.
Woo! My God, today. So, hey, so everyone that may be just tuning in, what is Walter? All right, brother. Amen. Amen. And Ashe. You forgot the Ashe, brother. So, if you are just tuning in, this is Mo that came on the screen with us. She's our beautiful technical director and also my sister at Gammon Theological Seminary, and also a sister to Kevin, who's also a alum of Gammon Theological Seminary. But yes, that was powerful. Let's continue this conversation. Anyone had any thoughts about this?
So Kevin said a lot of things just now. So I'm gonna try to take one piece of what he said. What came to mind when he was speaking was this book called Helping Hurts, and how sometimes we have the intentions to help, but sometimes giving people too much might hurt them. And I agree to a point when it comes to that power, especially if you have the God complex that you're going in and bringing Jesus to these people instead of Jesus is already there and you're meeting them there, and you're just being a vessel, you've been a mouthpiece, bringing doing what God is asking you to do, but you're not bringing God there because God is already there. And when you are dealing with a lot of my work, when I think about ministry, I think about low income rural areas. And so when I'm thinking about low income rural areas, I believe they are the most praying, faithful, loyal people ever. They just don't have the resources and the means like maybe urban areas could have. So that would be their lack. But I don't believe their faith is a reflection of where power of where they want to go. But in Helping Hurts, it talks about how this ministry had that complex where they believed that they was bringing Jesus to these people because they view them as less than, because they didn't have the means and the resources and the clothes or the statuses as they did. And when they got there, they realized Jesus was already there. And what they realized is, instead of trying to bring Jesus to these people, is to use their assets, use what they're already good at, and then to build the ministry from that. If they use what these people already have, instead of trying to create something in their community, then you have a better chance of doing ministry and doing it well and impacting people. Now, one of my favorite books in the Bible is Luke, and it is not per se what Luke said, but it's about who Luke is. And when Luke went to a particular city, he built, and he went into that city with the idea of, let me leave something, or let me give these people something, and let these people feed off of me, in a sense. And that's what I believe that we need to do when we take ourselves, our little power that each one of us have, when we go into a specific church or a place, that we take our power to help the assets that's already there, that's already there, not to always build. And I'm a creative. I believe in creating, but I also believe in using the creativity that's already there to build what God has already asked me to build.
Yeah, I think having that spirit of creativity is very very needed in when you're fighting anti-racism, because a lot of times the constructs that we have built, they're maintained because we think ritualistically. So we think that we have to maintain certain things. So it takes this spirit of creativity to be able to see outside of where we are now. How can we exist in such a way that we're not maintaining certain racist platforms? How can we be inclusive even in our worship context? If you're an artist, how can you be inclusive in maybe a song you're writing, or maybe you are a visual artist? How can we include other narratives, other aesthetics, other sounds? I'm a musician, so other sounds in our worship, in our art, that allows people to be able to see how we can live cohesively. That's one thing. As a worship leader, I'm constantly I have a challenge. The challenge to uphold is to be inclusive. Always be inclusive, and because one thing that Dr. Kinney talked about in chapter 2 was the dueling consciousness. He he went back and he did the Sankofa art of going back and fetching it. He went back to W.E.B. Du Bois' concept of double consciousness, and he talked about how it may be harmful to have this existence that's dueling. And me, as a Black man, as a person of color who's in the worship context, I have to always be mindful of these paradigms that are tradition, and how a lot of them we just maintain because it's what we've always done. But I'm also having to be inclusive of my own Blackness, other people who are multilingual in the congregation. I'm blessed to be at a authentically multicultural church, so I'm always doing this inclusive perspective, and I'm having the ability to do it with a more informed perspective, because of Dr. Kendi's the way that he spelled out dueling consciousness. And I don't have to look at it as dueling, that I can look at it as a fluid process, that they all can work together and not necessarily be dueling. And I appreciate how Dr. Kendi spelled out the dueling consciousness. But Elizabeth, I know that you have a lot of wisdom and expertise, and a lot of you have a true heart and passion for multiculturalism and inclusion. What are some of the experiences that you had with inclusion that you think have informed your ministry experiences?
Well, I'm honored, but I don't know that I would say I have wisdom and expertise, but I definitely am honored and glad to be here. Yeah, I really, this have been really moved by this book and just this whole conversation. And so I was born and raised here in Mississippi, and I loved, Kevin, I don't know if you coined the term toxic hospitality, but I am stealing that and using it. I will credit you. I love that. That's like perfection. That's such a great description, especially for white women, especially here in the South. Like that whole toxic hospitality, I think, is very true of so many of us, unfortunately, that and I was talking to a friend about this a few weeks ago, that it was like, it's just mind-boggling to me that so often you can talk to someone who is sweet as they can be to you face to face, but then will turn around and under different circumstances be literally life-threatening, and or will support policies, either will be literally life-threatening in calling the police, or in a different environment, face to face, in an interpersonal interaction, or at a policy level or something like that. And a friend and fellow pastor said, no, don't call them sweet, call them charming. They're charming. They're not sweet. That is not kind. Like, stop saying that. They're charming in person, which I thought was a good thing to help kind of keep me in check. I was like, you know what, you're right. Yeah, like this toxic hospitality of we're kind to everyone. And it made me think of like the movie Hidden Figures. Which is problematic in its own ways as well, with some of the white saviorism in that. But there's the line where Kirsten Dunst's character is talking to, I think it's Octavia Spencer's character, and she's kind of defending herself at the end, and she's like, I really have nothing against you women. And Octavia Spencer says to her, I'm sure that you believe that. And I thought that was so powerful, because I'm sure Kirsten Dunst's character does believe that she doesn't have anything against her, but that doesn't undo that she does. She's got a lot of self-awareness that she's missing. She's got a lot of stuff that she needs to unlearn, and she's doing a lot of harm upholding white supremacy and patriarchy that she doesn't even recognize is hurting herself too, much more actually all these other women that she is perpetuating harm to. And I look at that, and I realize like the ways that I have been part of that. And I look at my own family and recognize, I know you were kind of talking earlier, and Kevin, and talking about the ways that we have to be in solidarity and not just be in support or just in advocacy. And I've heard some people talk about it as like being accomplices and not just allies, right? Like you have to be fully in this with people. And we have to be willing to acknowledge what our privileges are and acknowledge what our history is. And so recognizing kind of my own history in Mississippi, and recognizing like the power dynamics. And like you said, so much of race is about power. Well, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Like that's why race was invented by white people to create a power dynamic. That's all it is. It's a power dynamic. And I have this memory when I was a kid of watching, I don't remember the name of the movie now. It's an old movie. It's black and white, interestingly enough, but it's a black and white movie about being black and white, about this guy that he's a black man that is able to pass as white and becomes a doctor and like marries into a white family. I can't remember. It's like a classic, movie from the 40s. And the whole movie is about him being terrified of being found out. And I remember watching this with my dad as a kid and being so confused, because I was like, if he passes as white, why is he not white? Like, it was the first time that I kind of was like, so race is not just the color of your skin. What is it then if it's not? Because as a child, it was explained to me like, oh, it's, race, we were taught nobody's better than anybody else. God made everybody. Everybody's created in the image of God. Like, we're told all these niceties, right? And all of these, this is what Christians believe. And we treat everyone with love and respect, and everybody's created equal. And race is just, some people have different skin color. But then slowly, when we say the word black, we say black people for inexplicably. And someone has to, if someone passes that was white, that's bad. And like, it would be really bad if they found that out. so clearly it's something more than your skin tone, but no one could explain to me what it was if it wasn't just his skin tone, you know. And anytime I would start to, as I got older, and ask questions, my father in particular was like, well, race, we just need to stop talking about it. Racism just exists because we talk about it. If we would just stop talking about it, it wouldn't exist. And then so it was just like a lot of like white people being really, really uncomfortable with race and talking about race. And a lot of push towards neutrality and colorblindness was kind of like, when I was growing up, that was the ultimate goal, was colorblindness, and no talk about the equity that we were talking about. And it wasn't until I got to college and was working on a project in social work classes. I majored in social work and was working on a project on the civil rights movement. And I went to school in Texas. And so there were 4 of us in the group, and 2 were from Texas. And there was me from Mississippi and then another student from Memphis. And so there's Brittany, a student from Memphis, and she was Black. And then there's me. And so Brittany and I bonded because our experiences of race were much more similar. The students from Texas had a very different, their experience of race was much more with Latinx and white relations. Ours was much more Black and white relations. And so Brittany and I got to talking and started to have some really great conversations that, of course, looking back now, I can only imagine how much I must have exhausted her, because I was having all these revelations that she was probably like, okay, white girl, like, this is not new information, but good for you, I guess. And I remember distinctly having one of these, I'm like 18 years old, and was like, oh my God, all these things are happening. And did you know? And was like, isn't it just such a relief to be able to talk about this? And she was like, Elizabeth, white people don't talk about this. Like, we talk about this over dinner. Like, it's only you that doesn't talk about it. We talk about this all the time. And it's just like, it just was so, it was this huge revelation to me. I genuinely didn't know, because truly, like, I was actively, explicitly told racism would go away. Race wouldn't be a thing if we would just shut up about it. And the irony of white people who invented race being like, if Black people would stop talking about racism, it would just go away, like, was just so crazy. But I think we have no concept of the history, and there's just, because there's a purposefulness, right? Like, there's a purposeful sort of forgetting, and, well, this is the way it's always been. Because if we don't learn the history of how these systems were put in place, if we don't learn that this was a very calculated, self-made system that was designed to benefit us, we don't internalize the guilt. We don't learn that if it was a system that we put in place, it's a system that we can change and that we can eradicate and that we can rebuild in a different way. We learn, oh, it's like gravity. We can't, it's just how it is. We can't do anything about that, right? So it has taken a lot of years of probably very exhausting conversations for a lot of people who've been very patient with me, I think, for there to be revelations. But I think there is, though, a lot of irony in the ways that we just don't, white children are actively discouraged from talking about this, and then grow up to be adults that are terrified. And that terror, though, becomes dangerous to people of color. And when there's no actual like, they're terrified, but there's no actual danger to white people. Like, we're in danger of being uncomfortable a little, but, like, we're fine. It's actually really, really life-threatening for other people. So, sorry, Kevin, you were going to say something?
Yeah. So, yeah, the work of racism, like you talking about it being very exhausting work, I think that's a great point. It makes me think of a book by Thomas More called Soul Care. But on a personal level, I remember doing these like dialogues on like the 13th Amendment and prison reform and things like that with some local congregations in Tupelo. And you had white churches and black churches. You had the students from Russ College up. Like, so you had like this informed, faith-based, spearheaded conversation on what is going on. And as the history was starting to be brought to light, and people were able to articulate it because they were in a space to where I had already emotionally dealt with this. So now, like, okay, I came to teach. Like the students were doing their job. One of the ladies was like, so how do we fix it? Right? And that's a great question, because there should be some type of end goal that we're coming to. And because we couldn't, she said, well, this is all great, but this is just too much. And so I'm just going to have to leave. And it was understandable. But then one of the other pastors said, and that's the thing, we can leave a conversation like this because we need a break. But what do? We just left. And we wonder why there's so much tension. And the reason why I bring up the Thomas More book, because he differentiates the difference between fixing something and caring for something. We can't always fix our soul. We have to do the care. Like, this work of racial reconciliation isn't just about policy shifts. If relationship reconciliation is to happen, and this acknowledgement is supposed to happen, and like how you're going to have those revelations, and how I'm going to have these revelations, and how we're going to have these points of tensions, or even these fights, right? How do I care for you in the midst of this? Do I still provide a safe space for Nick, or when I'm upset with you, I sell you up downstream? Because you should just be happy that you got a position here and we paying you, because you know they don't pay that good over where you could be at. Are we creating these spaces of care? When you come to me, I'm not just going to just unload on you because this is the only time I'm going to get it, because I never believe that there is really a brighter tomorrow. So you're just going to get it, and this is for everybody. How do we care through the midst of all this? And do I have the answers for it? No, but that's the importance of being in community. My dad, he like worked with a lot of people from different countries in Africa, and they would come to the house. And I remember this man, he came over and he said, Reverend Kosh, I like when I come to you because you take me shopping. You take me shopping. And he said, every time I come here, the lady who I stay with, she give me dead man clothes. Her husband had died, and they had a lot of money, right? So these was nice clothes. I'm like, boy, you ain't give me them dead man clothes. But he was like, these are dead man's clothes. Where I'm from, you don't wear dead man's clothes. You respect me. You respect me. You take me shopping. I get to pick what I want. I don't have to look like you. And that within itself, like hearing that story again, it shows me, are we just giving people dead man's faith? Because I don't want to look like you. I want to tell you how Jesus is active in my life, in my heart, in my community. Just like Mashakadi was saying, like, God is already here. I didn't have to see God when you showed up. Yes, I acknowledged God when you showed up. But do you even realize that God was already here? And that takes a certain type of care, and not just fixing it, but those are things that we're, just like we have this dual consciousness in chapter 2, there is also these working the both of fixing and caring for simultaneously.
That is so powerful. You both said something so monumental, Elizabeth and Rev Kev. First of all, every time I say that, I have to give credit to you, Kevin. Toxic hospitality. Um, because I wrote a piece called Colorblind. Um, and I have it's a film, a short film, if you will. It's a spoken word piece that I put to I produced and directed, and it talks exactly about what you're talking about. And I didn't have the term to do that. So every time I talk about this piece, about the film, the short film, Colorblind, I'm going to say it's basically a dramatization of my notion on a term that my friend coined, Reverend Kevin Kosh, on toxic hospitality. And you, just like what you said, Elizabeth, how we become so fearful, and then we cover up our fear. 2020 has taught us so much about a mask. We cover up our fears with this mask of niceties and hospitality, and it blocks us from being able to have relationships with people. We're so scared to ask questions. I'm scared to ask someone, lady, do not touch my beard. If ask me first. One of my first Sundays at a church that I was serving at, this lady, she was saying, because of toxic hospitality, she would say, "Oh, I'm so nervous, but I just want to," and she just grabbed my beard, and I almost. So her husband signs the checks, so that's why I had to be very wise about how I addressed her. But I wanted to tell her, ma'am, this isn't a petting zoo. This isn't an auction block. I'm not standing on an auction block. So you do not have the freedom to just touch my person because you want to. It doesn't become nice because you gave a disclaimer in front of it. But I was at another church and a lady started perusing I have a nose ring, as y'all can see. I used to have a green one. And she started perusing it to see if it was actual emerald. Like, is it real emerald? She started perusing, literally touching it. I wanted to go out so bad, but because of toxic hospitality, I, as a man of color, I cannot, well, not that I cannot, I make a choice. I make a choice about when I choose to vocalize my true opinions in that moment. If I'll be considered the angry Black man in this context, if I'm in a predominantly white context and I'm getting mad because someone's touching my nose ring, why are you getting mad because I'm touching your nose ring? It's not a race issue. Yes, ma'am, it is. It is. It is a race issue if I'm in an all-white context and you walk up to me and peruse my nose ring and ask if it's real emerald. Yes.
Would be there. Would you do that to a white person or any other person other than a Black person?
I'm gonna say I've had a nose ring for many, 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 many years, and no one's ever touched my nose.
Never. It's not. This isn't a petting zoo. You just don't walk up to people and touch their person, and we think that we think it's okay by putting a disclaimer in front of it. But I so agree with you, Elizabeth, in the sense that we have made it difficult to have these conversations, and we have given room to even more toxic masculinity. We don't even want to talk about it, and so. A lot of context, I don't know how to say certain things. I don't know how to express my discomforts. One thing that we experience, that I experience when I'm doing multiculturalism in the church, is expressing the sentiments or the traditions of Black church. So if we're in a context and if Black people aren't saying anything in the church, something is wrong. Not at one point in this church service are you not going to hear somebody moaning, somebody saying amen, somebody responding. It's very much a call and response. It's very much a shared endeavor. It's not just us being quiet and listening to the one person up there. It's very shared. They may be leading it, but the community is sharing in the preaching. The community is sharing in the worship leading. It's not just one person that we're looking at and we be quiet and let them do it. That's not African. We didn't inherit that. We didn't inherit that sense. Even though there is someone who is a priest or someone who we're still engaged in it. So I was saying, I always like or want to say, if we don't make it, we don't open the door for Black people to do that, it feels awkward. And they may not know that. They may not know, why does it feel awkward, or why does it feel, yes, call and response, Yolanda. Yes, you gotta have call and response. It's very Black. If somebody says something, we're going to want millennials. We got a different kind of call and response. We want to say that part. We want to say our response is a little different than amen and preach, reverend. It's a little different, but you have to have call and response. And if you want to welcome Black people, people of color into the context. But it's very difficult to have that conversation when we have this atmosphere of toxic hospitality, where we don't allow people to say, you know what, I come from a context where we gotta say hallelujah or amen or stand up or clap. It's difficult for me to lead worship and I can't clap or I don't hear a response. It's difficult. It's very much a shared endeavor for me. I cannot just stand up in front of people and worship and not engage with them. I have to, because it's my culture. I bring that, and I appreciate how you see the value in affirming. I think that gives room for true affirmation of our whole selves. I don't just bring my faith with me. I bring my culture with me. I bring my experiences with me. I bring what grandmama told me, what big mama told me. I bring all of that with me when I come to worship, not just my Bible. I bring everything about myself. So when we have a atmosphere that's truly caring, as you said, my brother, and let me put this up there so y'all can see it. What is that? So Care by, who is that? Thomas Moore? Yes, So Care by Thomas Moore. So talking about fixing versus care. When we care about people, we allow them to bring their whole selves, and we lay down this toxic hospitality. And I'm gonna say one more thing, and I'm gonna pass the baton to you, Mo, because I know you. I'm feeling you in the spirit. Something got the Lord tugging on me and you right now. But so there was an endeavor. I'll just say a certain organization held a march in my community, a Black Lives Matter march, and this particular organization, I went to support the endeavor. However, I was really perturbed because of what you said, Rev Kev. That word, I didn't have the word for it, but your genius you prophetically gave verbiage, gave a lexicon that speaks to what I was feeling. And y'all, they were here to do a Black Lives Matter march. But then when the march is over, you leave. We're not talking about the institutions in this community. We're not building relationships with the community, with the businesses, with the people here. You just come and you do a march because it's the politically correct thing. It's the progressive thing to do. But you leave afterwards and you turn your noses up at us every other day. But this one day, because it's convenient, it doesn't compromise your convenience to come for this one day. But every other day, it's inconvenient to come and have a relationship and to wrestle throughout the week with what it means to be an anti-racist. That type of thing, that toxic hospitality, because it's really difficult to really put your finger on it whenever you can say, no, we did a Black Lives Matter march. Like, so we did a march. How am I racist?
You can check my Instagram page. I'm obviously anti-racist.
That part.
Right.
But Mo, I feel like you had something to say.
Yeah, so I had a lot to say, but when you said they came in, I said a show. That's what came to mind. Is they came in to do a show. They didn't come in to build relationships. And I was at that same march too. And I have no one's reached out and to the only black HBCU. Or no one has did that I know of. And so to me, it was more of a formality and a show than it was let me go in and bring my resources that I know that I have to the group of people that I know that don't have the same resources and the same capabilities that I have, and that's aggravating. But then the question that kept coming to mind was, is it our responsibility to educate the ignorant for a policy that their ancestors brought? You know, that is my question. And the reason why I asked that question is because it has over and over. I worked in Alabama as a US2 missionary, and we dealt with race relations. And the conversation kept saying, but y'all, your men are in jail, but your women are on welfare. Y'all aren't doing, but you talking to a Black woman who didn't have kids at the time and who had an education, but you only looking at what the system had did to a particular percentage of my people. But not all of us fit into that category. But that's what all this particular group of people was focused on. And then my frustration with them was, can you help? Have you seen how many of your kids was doing some type of drugs or got in trouble but got a pass? Or how many of your niece and nephews did something and you know they should have went to jail or they should have got some kind of punishment, but didn't get that punishment? Because we already know that the system is rigged, and a drug charge for an African American male versus a white male is penalized at a different rate, at a very outrageous rate, right? And so it's not that our community is worse or bad or don't have the capability to be the same or not even better. We just have a system that holds us back, that says that no, you getting ahead too quick and you're doing too much. So let me find a way to take your community. And we're going to start with the Black man, because if you don't have any men in the house, you can't have a generation, because now you got your men in jail and your women are trying to figure out how to raise a house by themselves. And so that is this just the system. Then someone would say, oh, well, if you don't do it, but don't all of us speed? Don't all of us try to cut a corner every once in a while? Everybody is trying to get to the next step or the next phase as quickly as possible, but only some get stopped. Not just stop, but you get handcuffs, or you get bricks on your ankles, you get held down, and that is,
or you get a knee in your neck,
right? Or you get a hand over your mouth so you can't breathe, so that your organs will shut down and you would just die. And I think that's what has happened to a generation of our people, that we have stopped breathing. And the oxygen is no longer going to our brain and our heart, that we just stop existing and allowing the system to be what the system is. What I love about Stacey Abrams, I'm sorry to bring politics into this, but what I love about Stacey Abrams, she took that L. She should have been our governor, but she took an L. Instead of being sour about her L, she said, this ain't gonna never happen again. I'm gonna make sure that every vote that should be voted, and everybody that has the opportunity to vote, they will vote, and they are gonna vote, because I'm gonna make sure. She was that mama that kept knocking at the door, that kept saying that you're gonna do this if I gotta continue to do it. And that's what we have to be for our community. We don't always have to make sure that the next person or the person that's outside of our community understands us. We got to make sure that we understand each other and make sure that we can empower our community to do better. I'm not saying don't educate them, but don't make that the focus of your education, but to make sure that your folk, your people, the people in your community has a lift up. It's a book that they make us read in seminary. God, I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's basically saying that when you get your education, don't forget your people. And there's a sense of Sankofa. You got your education, but reach back. Make sure that your people are now educated. Make sure they know a fraction of what you might know. They might don't have the money or the resources to go to your seminary, but go and teach them what you learn. And I know even they tell us in seminary, like, your people ain't ready. You can't teach them what you just learned. They're not ready. And I think that's the worst thing that we can ever do to our people.
I think that is so powerful. You were going to say something, Elizabeth? Go ahead.
Yes, 100%. And also just shout out Stacey Abrams, daughter of a Mississippi United Methodist pastor. But also just fully affirming to, like, the number of things. I went to a private school that shall remain nameless here in Mississippi. And the number of things that I know for a fact that were covered up or were paid for or were because parents had friends in the right places, like, the number of white children that got out of things that absolutely should have, like, that would have actually, like, really, really, really should have been held accountable in a lot of ways, like for character building reasons, that didn't. It's mind boggling. And the number of times that often, like, those kids don't even really understand what was at stake, that they were even shielded from, like, how bad it almost was. Like, they don't even know that they were almost arrested. They don't even know how, like, they don't even realize what they almost avoided, and genuinely like don't recognize that they were, like, born on third base and think they hit a home run kind of a thing. Like, the number of times that happens is mind-boggling, and / how often people just, like, take for granted or assume that they just deserve that somehow because that was something that their family was able to provide, or don't understand that that's not something that everybody's family can do. That's not something everyone has access to, and that's not fair. Like, that's not how the system should work. It shouldn't be just because you happen to have an uncle who's a lawyer or a cop or whatever, that you happen to get out of a very serious situation that was absolutely your fault, you know, like, or whatever. Whereas somebody else who just happens to be Black and was in a white neighborhood gets pulled over for no reason, and, you know, like, just
or killed.
Or killed, exactly. And the number, there was a tweet by a white woman talking about when she was a teenager and some stupid thing she had done at a house party and running from the police, and just, like, it was this whole story about her, like, really stupid encounter with the police where she did absolutely everything wrong at every turn and survived it, and ended the story with saying, how many mistakes were you allowed to survive? And inviting white people to reflect on how many of their mistakes as young people were they allowed to survive, and recognizing that it's not equal, it's not equitable, and that it's really important, like you said, that it shouldn't be the responsibility of Black people and those that are oppressed, and that those who are having to survive this system to then turn around and educate those of us who created the system and benefit from the system about the system. So I think it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it's so important to center the voices of those that are most impacted, and to try to make sure that yours, like, the people in the center of the circle, are the ones that we need to be listening to the most, but also never make that something that, like, we expect anybody to do the work for us. And so,
right, an object of convenience.
Right. So it's really wonderful that we have things now, like we have, I mean, I've learned so much from Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and people that are already putting out all this amazing work that they are willing to put out there, that you can pay for webinars, you can pay for content, you can get books like Ibram Kendi's, you can get all of these great resources that are out there without exhausting somebody and me just, like, calling you and being like, hey, tell me about your trauma, you know, like, that's not, finding that balance of being, like, centering the voices of Black people that are most affected by this without demanding more emotional labor, more intellectual labor from people. And, you know, certainly do not always get that right. But I think that's something that I think there's, like, a people, well-meaning white people, God bless them, myself very much included. Like, I think often we, in trying to, like, oh, I'm supposed to be centering people, like, we'll go way too far the other way and immediately, like, call your Black friend and then be like, tell me all the things, and it's just not.
But don't want to join actual dialogue,
right?
Like, yeah,
but not realizing the power dynamic of, like, how would it feel for someone to call you and be like, speak to me on behalf of your entire race and tell me the whole history of critical race theory, and I'm going to expect you to be an expert on it. I'm like, is that really a good idea? I don't feel like it.
I just had a white friend ask me that this week. Can you give me your your experience on, or your thoughts on critical race theory? I'm like, man, join a conversation.
Like, you have Google. I don't know. It's just, like,
join the conversation. But we are getting to that hour mark. We are, huh?
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
The best way to learn a language is to immerse yourself in it. If the best way for someone who's not black to learn who blackness is to immerse yourself in it, we have a lovely seminary and we have plenty of HBCUs that they can attend and immerse themselves in the black
You are
culture. They
absolutely
really
right.
are.
I think that really the work of true anti-racism is not about convenience. It's about doing an ongoing relational endeavor that you are willing to. I'll say this, and then we have to close out. And I want to give y'all opportunity to let people know how to follow you if you all want to. So I was working with another internship, and it was a predominantly white context, and I was having to work with volunteers, and the volunteers were white, and a lot of the things that they were giving me. Usually, what I'm doing working is in worship, as a worship leader, musician type of thing, and I was having to organize liturgy, and I was trying to encourage the um, the white people to do a little bit more than just say, "Hey Nick, I like this song," or "in this song too," and this song, and then and but I mean, even if they did that, that would be more work. Like that would be, I would be grateful for that. Like, give me like a name of a song, an artist, or something like that. They would say, "Hey, do you know the song like by Faith Hill or something like that?" Like, no, I don't know. No, I don't know a lot of the artists. So I would say, let's covenant together and give me the name of the artist and the song. And they would say, "Hey, we do YouTube links." And I said, "Oh, that's even better. You just give me a YouTube link, and that'll give me the opportunity, someone who's new to this repertoire, to hear it and learn it." And I would just get do you know the song that goes dip da da da? No, I don't know the dip da da da. I don't know that. I need you to give me an artist. So if you want it, take the initiative and find the artist and give me the artist. That I think that is a work of anti-racism. Whenever you have somebody who's new in the room, take 2 seconds to fill them in. Don't just assume, oh, you have to do all the work of learning our repertoire. And I think that when we're doing that in worship, if we have people who are bilingual, include, every now and then, liturgy in their language. Don't make it okay. You just have to learn, like the narrative that says you're in America. You have to learn, speak English. Like, that's so insensitive. This country wasn't an English speaking country. I mean, before the genocidal people who discovered the country came here and brought European languages with them. But I just really think that the work of anti-racism really means you have to be willing to inconvenience yourself, and try to see the world from someone else's eyes. But I want to give my fellow panelists an opportunity to let the world know how they can how you can follow them and join in community with them. Follow them on Instagram, follow their school organizations on Instagram and Facebook. Y'all take it away. Let us know how we can keep in touch with you.
So yeah, you can follow Gammon at Gammon 1883 on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And please go like us on Facebook, but not Facebook, YouTube. We need 1,000 followers so that we can go live more often. But you can follow me, Shakti, at Shakti, or you can follow Poetry Girl, LLC.
Poetry Girl LLC. Make sure y'all follow her. Do it right now. Take 2 seconds. Take 2 seconds, y'all. Go follow Poetry Girl LLC on Instagram and follow Gammon 1883 on Instagram. All right, Elizabeth. Let us know how we can be in relationship with you.
Yes, so I'm Elizabeth.Corrine, so ELIZABETH.CORINNE, and I can drop it in the chat too. is my personal Instagram. And then I also run the Wesley Connection Instagram for Millsaps. So that's Millsaps Wesley Connection. We're weird. We spell it with an X. I'll put it in the chat. As well.
Is that it? Is that your first one? Kinda.
Yeah, 1 R and 2 N's.
1 R and 2 N's.
And N-E, yes. The Corinne is what gets everybody. Don't worry about it. It's a messy one, but yeah. So that's my Wesley one, and then my personal one is Elizabeth Corinne. Would love to chat with all of y'all, so I'll drop it in the chat as well.
Y'all make sure y'all follow Elizabeth.Corinne. That's CORINNE. That's 1 R, 2 N's. 1 R, 2 N's. All right. And Millsaps, I didn't catch the other one, but I'm sure you could do Millsaps College on Instagram. You can find her probably.
Yeah, Millsaps College is the general one, and then Millsaps Wesley Connection. But connection is CONNEX. We're just a lot. I'm gonna put it in the chat. It's fine.
Okay. What Wesley Connection and Millsaps College. All right, Rev Kev, let us know how we can be in relationship with you, brother.
All right. You can follow me on Facebook at Kevin Kosh, KOSH, or you can look me up on Instagram at I am Rev. Oh, I forgot my own name, right?
I am
Kevin Kosh on Instagram, and then Kevin Kosh on Facebook. And if you want to keep up with our ministry at Jackson State University, look up Jackson State Wesley Foundation.
And it's the word Jackson State Wesley Foundation.
Yep.
Y'all make sure y'all go to Jackson State Wesley Foundation. That's WESLEY, Jackson State Wesley Foundation. Make sure y'all go to I am Kevin Kosh. That's KOSH. And y'all go follow my brother Rev Kev. And make sure that when you say the term toxic hospitality, you give credit to my brother, or we coming after you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your all your feedback. Everyone, for all the comments that you were giving. Yolanda, I saw your comment. That was brilliant when you said after the march, what do we do next? That is so powerful. Make sure that you, please, Yolanda, everybody watching, make sure y'all tune in next week for the another meeting of How to Be an Anti-Racist Book Club. All right, we love y'all. Peace, peace, peace.